Let me tell you something no one talks about, but every man feels. The moment your value drops in his eyes, it's almost impossible to undo. And the scary part, most women don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. You see, value isn't about looks, your job title, or how much you give to him. It's about the energy you bring into the relationship, the way you hold space for yourself, the way you respond instead of chase. It's the quiet confidence that says, I choose you, but I don't need you to validate me. And if that energy fades, even just a little, he feels it instinctively, subconsciously. And just like that, the dynamic shifts. He starts pulling back. You start questioning yourself. And a relationship that had potential turns into another emotional roller coaster you never asked to ride. That's why in this video, I'm exposing the 4 subtle things that kill your value in front of a man, even when your heart is in the right place. Because high value energy isn't a game or manipulation tactic. It's a mindset, a lifestyle. And once you understand what silently drains it, you can stop shrinking to fit someone else's comfort and start standing in your worth. This isn't about being hard to get. This is about being hard to forget. So if you're tired of being misunderstood, underappreciated, or always the one trying harder, stay with me. The next 30 minutes might just change how you show up in love forever. Most women have been taught that attraction is about appearance, charm, or saying the right thing at the right time. But the truth? Male attraction runs much deeper than that. At its core, it's wired into how a man perceives a woman's value, not just physically, but emotionally, energetically, and psychologically. Here's what most people miss. Men are drawn to women who make them feel something powerful, but also safe. That doesn't mean you're supposed to become his therapist, his mother, or his emotional pillow. It means you become a mirror, reflecting back a version of him that he's proud to be in front of. Confident, protective, inspired. And the only type of woman who can do that consistently is the one who knows exactly who she is. Masculine energy is wired to pursue, to earn, to conquer, but not just anything. It seeks out what it feels is rare, what feels slightly out of reach, what challenges him, not in a confrontational way, but in a way that makes him want to rise higher, be better, show up. That's why a woman who leads with neediness, over-availability, or emotional chaos quickly becomes unattractive, even if she's stunning, successful, or incredibly sweet. Because the moment a man feels like he doesn't have to work for your presence, a part of his primitive wiring checks out. Not because he's ungrateful or cruel, but because desire is fueled by uncertainty, effort, and emotional polarity. The real magic lies in contrast. Masculine energy is forward, external, and active. Feminine energy is receptive, internal, magnetic. When a woman fully owns her feminine essence, her stillness, her mystery, her grace, it activates something in a man that logic can't explain. He just feels pulled toward her. He can't help it. And that pull is what creates long-term desire, not just temporary lust. But here's where a lot of women get it wrong. They either try to earn his love by proving their worth, or they swing too far into games and emotional unavailability to seem hard to get. Neither works. One depletes your energy and makes you easy to overlook. The other builds walls so high, no one can climb them, not even someone with the right intentions. Attraction isn't about tricking him. It's about training your nervous system to stop seeking validation and instead radiate self-trust. Because when you trust yourself, you stop trying to convince others to see your value. They just feel it. And men, they don't fall in love with what they're told. They fall in love with what they feel around you. If he feels grounded, excited, challenged, and emotionally at ease in your presence, he starts to associate you with those feelings. And that association is what keeps him coming back, thinking about you when you're not around, and investing deeper over time. Now, of course, not all men are ready for a woman like that. Some are stuck in immature patterns, chasing chaos or needing control. That's not your job to fix or mold. Your only role is to remain so rooted in your value that you naturally attract the kind of man who's ready to rise with you, not play games around you. So when we talk about the psychology behind male attraction, it all boils down to this. He doesn't fall for the girl who chases. He doesn't fall for the girl who gives him everything right away. He falls for the woman who makes him feel like a better man just by being in her energy. And the moment you become that woman, not through performance, but through alignment, everything starts to change. Let's talk about one of the most common and most dangerous mistakes women make early on with men: overgiving too soon. It usually starts with good intentions. You like him, you want to show him you care, you're excited about the connection, and you naturally start doing things that feel generous, thoughtful, maybe even nurturing. Whether it's buying him little gifts, going out of your way to help with his problems, texting good morning and good night every day, rearranging your schedule to see him, or emotionally investing before he's even really shown you who he is. You convince yourself you're just being loving. But here's what's really happening. You're giving energy without seeing if he's earned it. And for a high-value woman, that's a major shift in dynamic, one that puts you in the masculine energy of pursuit and provision, while he falls into the passive role of receiving without effort. The moment that happens, attraction starts to fade. Not because you did something wrong, but because men are wired to value what they earn, not what's handed to them on a silver platter. When you overgive too soon, you're essentially saying, here's all of me, before you've even shown me what you're bringing to the table. And that flips a switch in his mind. Suddenly he doesn't feel the need to pursue you anymore. The challenge is gone. The polarity disappears, and what started as a spark fizzles into something flat and one-sided. It doesn't matter how kind or sincere your giving is. If it's not balanced with discernment, it sends the message that your attention is cheap, that you're available for emotional labor, caretaking, or support without being asked. And let's be honest, a man will only rise to the level of effort that he feels he needs to win your heart. The sad part, a lot of women give early on because deep down, they're afraid that not giving will make him lose interest. That if they don't prove their value fast, he'll leave. But that fear is exactly what sabotages the attraction. Men don't fall in love with the woman who gives the most. They fall in love with the woman whose presence they feel grateful to receive. A woman who gives from overflow, not from fear. Who knows her worth so well that her time, energy, and affection feel like privileges, not entitlements. And if he's not reciprocating, if he's not putting in the same level of interest or investment, then your giving doesn't feel generous, it feels one-sided. It sets a precedent that you'll carry the emotional weight of the connection while he gets to coast. That's not love. That's self-abandonment, dressed as kindness. The truth is, you teach people how to treat you from the very beginning. And if you show up overgiving from day one, you're setting the tone that your needs come second, that you'll prove your value instead of owning it. And in the long run, that leads to resentment, burnout, and heartbreak. What you want to do instead is stay grounded. Receive. Let him show you who he is. Watch his effort. Observe his consistency. Give, but give slowly. Give after he gives. Give in response to energy that's mutual, not just potential. Because the woman who doesn't overgive, she's not cold, she's not withholding, she's wise, she understands that love should be built, not bought. And that right there is what keeps your value high and his respect even higher. Let's dive into something that silently erodes your value in the eyes of a man, something that often comes from deep emotional wounds, but shows up in subtle everyday moments, seeking constant reassurance. It might sound like this: do you still like me? Are you mad at me? Why didn't you text back right away? Do you think we're okay? Are you sure you're still interested? On the surface, these questions seem harmless. You're just trying to understand where you stand, right? But beneath that, there's often a deeper need, a desire to feel secure, to be chosen, to know that you're enough. And when that need starts driving your behavior, it shifts the entire dynamic of the relationship. Here's the problem. The more you seek reassurance, the more it signals to a man that you don't trust yourself, that you don't fully believe in your own worth. And once he senses that, something changes in the way he sees you. The magnetic, high-value energy that initially drew him in begins to fade. Why? Because constant reassurance seeking comes from a place of emotional instability, and that's not attractive, not long-term. Men are drawn to women who are emotionally grounded, who can regulate their own inner world, and who don't need external validation to feel okay. When a woman constantly asks for reassurance, it tells him, I don't feel safe within myself. I need you to constantly soothe my anxiety. I need you to keep reminding me that I'm lovable, desirable, and enough. And for most men, that's overwhelming. Not because they're heartless, but because it feels like pressure. It puts them in a parent-like role instead of a partner, and it kills polarity. Even worse, it starts to train the relationship dynamic to revolve around your fears instead of your connection. Every moment becomes about calming your insecurities instead of enjoying the relationship. And no matter how much reassurance you get, it's never enough, because the void isn't outside of you, it's within. The truth is, most of this behavior is subconscious. Maybe in the past you were ghosted, blindsided, betrayed. Maybe you were with someone emotionally unavailable, and now you fear that silence equals rejection. Maybe you've been told you were too sensitive or too much, so now you overthink every little shift in energy. But if you don't heal that within yourself, you'll carry it into every relationship, slowly pushing away the very connection you crave. Here's the shift. High-value women don't chase clarity, they embody it. They don't need to constantly ask where they stand because they know they're standing tall in their worth. If something feels off, they don't spiral into panic or perform for reassurance. They observe. They listen, they give space, and most importantly, they allow men to show up without being micromanaged or emotionally pressured. You can absolutely ask for clarity when it's appropriate, but there's a difference between a confident check-in and an insecure spiral. One comes from power, the other from fear. If you find yourself needing constant reassurance, pause and ask yourself, what am I really afraid of here? And can I hold myself through this without needing someone else to fix it? Because the moment you can self-soothe, you stop giving your power away. You stop letting anxiety drive your decisions. And that's when men start to feel drawn to you, not out of obligation, but out of admiration. In the end, it's not about being emotionless, it's about being emotionally resilient. And that quality, it's magnetic, unshakable, and unforgettable. This one's going to hit home for a lot of women, because it's something that often feels like love, but slowly turns into self-abandonment, making a man the center of your world. It usually starts out so innocently. You meet someone, you click, and suddenly there's excitement, butterflies, anticipation. You want to spend time with him, hear from him, plan things around him. That's natural. When we're falling for someone, our focus shifts. But here's the danger. When your life begins to revolve around his, you start losing the very thing that made you attractive in the first place. Your individuality, your independence, your energy. The moment a man becomes the sun and you start orbiting around him, the polarity begins to break down. Because healthy masculine men aren't looking for women who are lost in them. They're drawn to women who are rooted in themselves, who have passions, goals, routines, and joy that don't depend on his presence. When you cancel plans with friends, stop pursuing your own interests, or constantly adjust your schedule around his availability, you're sending a subtle but strong message. You matter more than I do. And while that might feel like love to you, what it actually communicates is a lack of boundaries, a lack of self-prioritization, and often a lack of self-worth. Men feel it. Even if they can't put it into words, they notice when your world starts shrinking to fit them. And ironically, instead of bringing them closer, it usually pushes them away, because you're no longer the woman they were originally drawn to. The one with her own vibrant life and magnetic energy. You've become someone who's waiting, watching, and adjusting herself around his behavior. And that's not partnership, that's emotional dependence. Here's the truth. The most attractive, unforgettable women are the ones who know that their life is already full, that a man is an addition, not a completion. They don't stop being who they are when someone new enters the picture. If anything, they become more of themselves. They stay in their routines. They continue nurturing their friendships. They chase their goals. They guard their peace. That kind of woman doesn't just capture a man's attention, she earns his respect. And without respect, love doesn't last. It's not about being distant or cold. It's about being centered. You can be warm, affectionate, and emotionally available, but you also need to be anchored in your own identity. Because when you are, you're not afraid of losing him. You're not molding yourself to fit his world. You're inviting him into yours. That energy, it's irresistible. When a man senses that your life doesn't fall apart if he doesn't call or text, when he knows that you're not waiting around for his attention, when he sees that your happiness isn't tied to his mood or validation, he starts to feel lucky to be in your life. Not pressured, not drained, just genuinely grateful. But the moment your emotions start rising and falling based on what he does, you hand over all your power. You stop being the chooser and start being the chaser. And that's the fastest way to lose your value in his eyes, even if you mean well. So here's the shift. Start showing up like the main character in your own life. Let him be a part of your story, but never the whole plot. Because a woman who knows she's already whole is the one who draws in the kind of man who respects her, values her, and wants to rise beside her, not above her. This is the mistake that can cost you your confidence, your clarity, and often your entire sense of self in a relationship. Ignoring your standards and boundaries. At first it seems small. You let something slide. You tell yourself, it's not a big deal. I don't want to seem too demanding. You compromise, accommodate, shrink a little just to keep the peace or avoid coming off as difficult. But here's what's really happening. Every time you silence that inner voice, fight every time you override what you know doesn't sit right with you, just to keep a connection going. You send a message, first to him, but more importantly to yourself. That message says, what I want doesn't matter as much. What I need is negotiable. As long as he stays, I'll adjust. And the truth is, men notice when your standards are fluid. They may not consciously register every time you compromise, but they feel the shift. The lack of boundaries makes them feel less respect, not more comfort. Because while a man might enjoy the convenience of a woman who lets everything slide, he never fully values her. You see, standards aren't about being rigid or inflexible. They're about having a clear sense of what you will and will not tolerate, what aligns with your values, your lifestyle, your emotional safety. Boundaries, on the other hand, are about protection. They're not punishments. They're self-respect in action. When you ignore those two things, you end up abandoning yourself just to stay connected to someone who may not even be giving you the bare minimum. And that slowly erodes your inner peace. You become anxious, you second-guess yourself, you wonder, am I asking for too much when really you're not asking for enough? A lot of women ignore their boundaries because they're afraid of being alone, afraid of scaring a man off, afraid that if they take a stand, he'll walk. But here's the truth. No one wants to say out loud, if a man leaves because you set a boundary, he was never meant to stay. Men don't leave because you have standards. High-value men respect standards. They rise to meet them, and the ones who don't, you're better off letting them walk away than building a relationship on silence, self-sacrifice, and resentment. The most magnetic women are the ones who calmly, clearly, and consistently enforce what they stand for. They don't yell, they don't beg, they don't explain themselves over and over. They simply state what they're available for and what they're not. And if someone can't meet them there, they gracefully exit. No drama, just self-honor. When you have strong standards and boundaries, you send out a very specific signal. I am not available for anything less than what I deserve. And that energy doesn't repel men. It filters them. It protects your space. It saves you from wasting time on people who were never capable of meeting you where you are. And the best part, when you do connect with a man who aligns with those boundaries, you won't have to perform. You won't have to fight to be seen. You won't have to tolerate breadcrumbs and call it love. Because the right man will see your boundaries not as walls, but as gates. And he'll want to be the one who's worthy of walking through them. So stop ignoring the voice inside you that says this doesn't feel right. Stop silencing your standards just to hold on to potential. Because when you honor your boundaries, you stop attracting men who test them and start attracting men who respect them. If you've made it this far, I want you to take a deep breath, because this is the moment everything shifts. This is where you stop giving your power away and start reclaiming it. Let's be honest. Most of us were never really taught what it means to value ourselves in love. We were taught to be nice, to be chosen, to be good enough for someone else. Somewhere along the way, we internalized the belief that love had to be earned through effort, perfection, or self-sacrifice. But real love, healthy love, doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. It doesn't require you to shrink, chase, prove, or please. It asks you to show up as you fully, boldly, authentically, with your softness and your strength, your standards and your heart wide open, but guarded with wisdom. Reclaiming your power isn't about playing games or acting detached. It's about owning your worth without apology. It's knowing that your value isn't something that rises or falls based on how a man treats you. It's constant, it's rooted, and it begins and ends with how you treat yourself. You don't have to overgive to be loved. You don't need constant reassurance to feel secure. You don't need to revolve your world around a man to keep his attention. And you never ever have to lower your standards to avoid being alone. You are allowed to take up space, to say no, to want more, to walk away when your peace is compromised. That's not being too much, that's being self-aware. The moment you stop betraying yourself for love is the moment you become magnetic to it. Because here's the secret. High-value women don't chase relationships, they attract them. Not by being perfect, but by being aligned. They do the inner work. They heal their wounds. They pay attention to the patterns. They don't stay stuck in cycles that drain them. They choose themselves again and again until the world around them reflects that choice. Reclaiming your power is a daily decision. It's choosing to believe you're worthy, especially on the days when you feel unsure. It's having the courage to walk away from almost right situations, knowing that almost will never be enough for you. It's holding your boundaries even when you're scared. They'll push someone away because you trust that the right one will stay and rise. It's not always easy. Sometimes reclaiming your power looks like sitting in silence when you want to send that text. Sometimes it looks like staying home and nurturing yourself instead of bending for someone who only calls last minute. Sometimes it means grieving the version of you who thought love meant giving everything away. But on the other side of that grief is freedom. Freedom from self-doubt, freedom from toxic dynamics, freedom from repeating the same story and calling it love. And in that freedom, you start writing a new story. One where you are the main character, not the supporting role in someone else's life. One where you don't need to be chosen to feel valuable because you've already chosen yourself. So let this be your reminder. You don't have to keep learning the hard way. You don't have to keep settling, hoping, waiting, or chasing. You're allowed to rise, to shift, to hold a new standard, and to do it not from bitterness, but from power. The kind of power that's quiet, steady, and undeniable. You don't have to become someone else to be loved. You just have to become the version of you that stops settling. And if no one has told you lately, you are worthy, you are enough. And your love is a gift, not a transaction. So here's your call to action. Not just for this video, but for your life. Reclaim your power every single day. Because the world needs more women who know who they are, what they deserve, and refuse to accept anything less. And if you're ready for that kind of life, hit that like button, drop a comment below, and say I'm choosing. And don't forget to subscribe, because this is just the beginning. Your power isn't lost, it's just been waiting for you to remember who you are.